Willow Creek Cemetery was known to be haunted. It had been the final resting place for generations of families in the small town of Millfield. But there was something about the cemetery that seemed off to those who visited. The trees surrounding the cemetery were gnarled and twisted, and the gravestones were crooked and covered in moss. No one ever ventured into Willow Creek Cemetery after dark. There were stories of strange occurrences and ghostly apparitions that haunted the graveyard at night. But one group of teenagers dared to venture into the cemetery on a moonless night. The group consisted of 5 teenagers: Lily, Mike, Alex, Tom, and Sarah. They had all grown up in Millfield and were intrigued by the rumors surrounding Willow Creek Cemetery. They had heard stories of ghostly apparitions and strange occurrences, and they wanted to see for themselves if there was any truth to the rumors. They arrived at the cemetery around midnight, armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure. As they walked through the rows of gravestones, they noticed that the air was thick with a strange, musty smell. It was as if the cemetery was alive, and the scent was its breath. The group walked deeper into the cemetery, and they noticed that the trees surrounding them were closing in. The branches were reaching out, as if trying to grab at them. The group started to feel uneasy and decided to turn back. But as they turned around, they noticed that the entrance to the cemetery was gone. It was as if the cemetery had swallowed them up. Panic set in, and the group began to run, but they couldn't find their way out. They were trapped in Willow Creek Cemetery. As they ran, they heard the sound of footsteps following them. They turned around to see a figure dressed in black robes, holding a scythe. It was the Grim Reaper, and he was coming for them. The group split up, each one running in a different direction. They could hear the sound of their own footsteps echoing through the cemetery, but they could also hear something else. It was the sound of the Grim Reaper's scythe, slicing through the air. They knew that he was getting closer. Lily, who had always been the fastest of the group, managed to outrun the Grim Reaper. She found herself in a clearing, surrounded by trees. But as she looked closer, she noticed that the trees were not just trees. They were people. The branches were their arms, reaching out to her. The leaves were their fingers, grabbing at her clothes. Lily tried to run, but she was surrounded. She could feel their cold breath on her neck. She turned around to face the Grim Reaper, but he was nowhere to be found. She was alone, in a cemetery surrounded by the dead. As the sun rose over Willow Creek Cemetery, Lily was found by the police. She was lying on the ground, surrounded by trees that had not been there before. The other members of the group were never found. They had disappeared into the night, swallowed up by the curse of Willow Creek Cemetery. From that day on, no one ever ventured into Willow Creek Cemetery after dark. The curse of the cemetery lived on, and the dead continued to haunt the living, trapping them in a never-ending nightmare.